Hello everyone, good evening. Uh, so I'm back after a while, after our 1 week break from the online lecture. So I hope you're doing fine. Uh, so last time we discussed the remedies available to you in case there is a breach in the if there is a breach in the obligation. Ngayon, we discussed personal and real obligations and yung mga nuances uh, nung provisions na yan. Now, in this case, other than breach, there other than breach of obligations, there are other instances wherein a person may be liable for damages. Now, to be clear, last time kasi when we answered the quiz, mukhang marami ang confused when we refer to damages. Ano? Uh, Damages actually is not damage. Hindi pareho 'yon. Now, in ano kasi in civil law parlance, damages refers actually to a certain amount of money that you give when mandated by the court, ganyan. Now, there are different kinds of damages. Meron tayong actual, moral damages, liquidated damages, but that's beside the point, that is for another lecture siguro. But in this case, let me just clarify na itong damages na tinutukoy natin dito is usually in the form of money at we are not really talking of damage in the normal sense of the word, damages is a different concept altogether in civil law. So again, damages is a sum of money that you pay for the troubles of someone. Parang ganun. Okay. So, the first part of this lecture will be dealing with Article 1170. Now, it says here na those who in the performance of their obligations are guilty of fraud, negligence, or delay, and those who in any way contravene the tenor thereof are liable for damages. Again, last time we discussed na kapag may breach in the breach of obligation, there is damages, di ba? Laging merong kasamang damages yan. In this case, there are other instances wherein one person may be liable for damages. And actually, in one sense, they are all different forms of breach of obligation. Okay? So, we will discuss them one by one so that we will be familiarized with yung what they are in detail. So, again, let's enumerate fraud, negligence, delay, and contravention of the tenor. Kung titignan natin dito sa ating handout, nandiyan sila sa may dark greenish parts. Okay, so let's go in the order in which itong mga kinds na to go in the order in 1170. So let's start with fraud. Now, when we say fraud, in Filipino kasi, mas madali siyang maintindihan when we translate it in Filipino. When we say fraud, panloloko. So, in the definition, sabi doon, deliberate or intentional evasion of the normal fulfillment of an obligation. Again, the keyword there is evasion. Actually, hindi. Pero sige. Evasion, what do we mean when we say evasion? Kumbaga, ini-evade niya yung obligation niya, parang kumakawala siya dun sa obligasyon niya. And it is deliberate or intentional. Okay? Kumbaga, in the first place, wala talaga siyang balak i-fulfill ng tama yung kanyang obligation. Ngayon, again, the remedy there is damages. But before we go to that, gaya nga ng sabi sa 1170, liable for damages ang isang tao na guilty of fraud. Now, but before we go there, let me just clarify kung ano ang tinutukoy na fraud dito sa section na to in this article ang tinutukoy natin ay yung tinatawag natin na dolo incidente. In civil code meron tayong dalawang klase ng fraud. Yung dolo causante and dolo incidente. I will give the distinction later. I will give the handouts later for that. Now, yung dolo causante, when we say dolo causante, it is the fraud, it is what we call causal fraud in English. Dolo causante is yung panloloko wherein the person who is not actually in for example buying something because of yung panloloko, he or she is parang persuaded o na persuade na pumasok sa isang kontrata. That is dolo causante. Now, in dolo incidente naman, there was walang panloloko doon sa part ng pagkuha ng consent nung for example in that case buyer, pero yung panloloko is doon na sa pag-fulfill doon sa obligation. Okay, for example, wala naman talaga akong balak na bumili ng sasakyan. But here comes a salesman, for example. Kaibigan mo. Sabi sa'yo, pare, meron akong sasakyan. Bagong-bago pa. 300 Toyota Vios, for example. So we know na that the Toyota Vios yung bago is around 800,000 to 1 million ang price. Sabi niya, ibibenta ko na lang sa'yo ng 50,000. Bagong-bago pa yon, walang sira. Okay. Ikaw, originally, you have no thought of buying a car. Pero dahil doon sa sales talk ng tao, sige, okay naman, mura. Mukhang, sabi mo nga, maganda yung sasakyan, bago pa. So, bilhin ko na, 50,000. Now, the problem is, yun pala, yung Toyota Vios na sinasabi niya is junk. Ano na pala, luma na. I mean, walang gulong or whatever that may be. Or in the first place, wala talagang car to begin with. Well, that's fraud. Panloloko yun. And the fraud happened before the perfection of the contract. Kumbaga, pumasok lang siya sa kontrata because of that fraud. That is what we call causal fraud. Pero hindi yun yung pinag-uusapan natin dito sa 1170. In 1170, we are talking instead of what we call dolo incidente or the incidental fraud. Ngayon, what the difference between causal fraud and incidental fraud is that doon sa causal fraud, doon sa umpisa, doon sa perfect ng contract yung fraud. Pero dito in incidental fraud, doon sa fulfill na ng obligation ang nagkakaroon ng panloloko. For example, bumili ka ng 100 na bottles ng wine. Winemaker, tagagawa siya ng wine. And there is really wine doon and you really know that there is wine, and the person who has the wine is really intent on fulfilling his obligation kasi nga it's a sale. Pero for example, ang napag-usapan niya ay 100 na bote, but instead niloko ka and ang binigay lang sa iyo is 80, for example. Well, that is fraud or panloloko in the fulfillment of the obligation. Walang problema doon sa creation, walang problema doon sa perfection ng contract, but actually in the fulfillment of the obligation. Or, sabi mo, bili ako ng 100 na bottles ng wine. Okay. Ang dineliver sa'yo ay 100 bottles of wine. Ano? Pero, well, na-fulfill yung obligation, ano? But there is intention na lokohin ka in the process. Like, for example, yung 100 bottles pala na yon ay hindi pure wine. Dinagdagan ng tubig. Mga ganun. Or grape juice. Para maglasang wine, but it's not wine. So, hindi normal yung fulfillment ng obligation. May panloloko doon sa part na yon. For example, ang sabi sa'yo, branded na damit. True, nakalagay, for example, ay Nike. Ang sabi, branded na shoes, Nike. Okay. Pero nung binigay na sa iyo yung binigay na sa iyo yung sapatos, ang binigay ay Mikey. That's what they call in marketing as class A. Pero is there really such a thing? Ano? Yun. So, kumbaga, hindi normal yung fulfillment ng obligation. Naloko ka in that sense. And that is what we call fraud or incidental fraud. At yun yung tinutukoy again ni 1170. Hindi yung causal fraud. Okay. So, that is fraud. Okay. So, let's go to negligence. Now, I think there is a need to distinguish kung yung fraud from negligence, ano. Now, sa fraud, di ba kanina deliberate at intentional ang sinabi natin. Dito naman sa negligence, the definition is voluntary act or omission which prevents the normal fulfillment of obligation. But there's no bad faith or malice. Walang mali siya. Kumbaga, hindi siya sinasadya. Unlike in fraud wherein it's deliberate or intentional. Ano? So, well, let's use an example para ma-visualize natin itong idea ng negligence. Ano? Now, in one of your quizzes, merong nagsabi na, Sir, paano kung, pala na ito, during the nag-agreehan na during the perfection of the contract, nag-agreehan na i-deliver sa akin yung cow. Okay? Pero eventually namatay sila. Ano? Well, apparently there's breach there, ano? But then we need to understand na what caused the death of yung mga kalabaw. What if it's due to negligence nung taong nagbenta, no? For example, yung kalabaw ay hindi pinainom ng tubig or kumbaga hindi inalagaan. Well, negligence is usually connected doon sa lack of care, kawalan ng care about sa isang bagay, ano. So in that case, the person, although namatay nga yung kalabaw, di ba? So he cannot normally fulfill yung obligation niya. So that's the person is liable for damages by reason of negligence. Kumbaga, dahil sa negligence niya, he or she will incur damages doon sa nangyari. Or say you bought you bought a very expensive painting abroad. For example, ano ba yung expensive painting na alam natin? Basta, expensive painting. Di ako masyadong into art. So yun. The example is a very expensive painting. Ngayon, di ba sabi natin last time, if we are referring to a specific thing, gaya nga nung sinabi natin, gaya nga nung discussion natin last time, if you're referring to a very specific thing, there is this obligation to take care of the thing, like a good father of a family. Di ba? Connected na siya dito sa negligence ngayon. So, yung negligence doon is the negligence part there is yung lack of, or yung failure to take care of the thing with the like a good father of a family. For example, yung very expensive na painting ay instead na, for example, na naka-vault sana, maganda yung packaging, naka-ensure na medyo siya na safe yung painting kasi na painting nga na very important pero the person hinan-carry, for example, tapos di pinapansin, nilagay doon sa lagayan ng baggage sa eroplano, for example. Is there care there? Meron bang diligence of a good father of a family in that case? Well, if you're a good father of a family, you will not treat yung expensive na painting as if it's nothing, 'di ba? As if it's just an ordinary baggage, ibibigyan mo ng enough care yung thing na yun. So if the painting ay nabutas, for example, yes, nandiyan pa yung painting pero hindi na normal yung fulfillment ng obligation, 'di ba? Meron ng defect yung product. The person who is the seller is liable for damages by reason of yung negligence niya in that case. There can be a lot of there are a lot of things na which can fall under this negligence, under negligence. Anything na kung hindi mo na fulfill yung obligation mo to take care of the thing like a good father of a family, you lack care in doing in fulfilling your obligation, in a sense na hindi na normal yung fulfillment ng obligation, like for example, dahil sa kapabayaan mo, nawalan ng na pato na naputol yung isang paa ng isang upuan, mga ganun na i-deliver mo sana, that is negligence and you are liable for damages for that.